Alrighty.
Boom, you are recording.
Let me share my screen. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Let me just set this all up so I can see like if people have any questions in the chat.
Sure, and I'll try to keep an eye on that as well, just so you can kind of focus on the coding part.
Okay. Give me 1 second. How do I like? Oh, right here. All right. Okay. So I already created the React app. I also already got us into our VS Code, so we can just get started on that. Everybody knows how to create a React app. So, okay, let me just get my notes up. Okay, so, all right. So, first, we want to create our, we just want to like install some stuff first. So we want to install Axios and Reach Router. So here in our terminal, we're just gonna install both of those. If you guys want to follow along, if you still want to be doing all this, or just watch the demo. All right, so that's good. And then we also have to install Reach Router. But you can also, I mean, you don't have to do it one by one. You can also do npm install Axios at Reach Router. So just like install them together. If, you know, if you're feeling a little wild, you can also do npm I Axios and then at Reach Router. Okay, cool. Okay, so how, at least personally, me and Albert actually like to do kind of the skeletal structure of the app. So so we can go to our source folder or src folder and just go to app.js and just remove all the stuff we don't need. Just delete that. And then just delete this and save. Okay. You also want to start your what is it? Your little app. So I'll just have it here.
Yeah, and to add on to it while she's doing it, it's pretty much creating the views folder, the components folder, and kind of empty files, even appropriately named, just so we know what we have to do still, and kind of visualize the framework and the steps that we have to take to complete the assignment.
Yep. Okay, so now that we have that started up, so like Albert said, we can create the folders. So I have 2 folders here called views and components. Okay, so in views, we just have this file that we're gonna call search bar. So this is basically just gonna be what's gonna have all that, the kind of the nav bar at the top where you can search for the ID and, you know, select your options. And then in components, we're going to have 2 components for now, which is people.js. Oh, sorry, that's my bad. Hold on, give me 1 second.
And on a side note of this, because of the assignment, it's not really rendering any separate page. So it really doesn't matter if you have a components and a views, in my opinion. Search bar can easily be a component, but we decided to go this route.
It's just I mean, it's just a bit more organized in a way. but I mean, to each his own, I guess. Okay, so now we have all four. And then, okay, so we're gonna look at the Star Wars API, just so you can, I mean, you guys have probably already seen this, but this is just to kind of grab, you know, information from their API. So say, for example, we want to say, get people to, and then you just request it and it shows you C3PO, or you want to get planet 4.
And the important thing to note here is the way the address is structured, so that you can remember that when you're putting it in your Axios GET request. It has to be verbatim, and every API is different. However, for Star Wars API, I noticed that if you do not have that trailing slash on Francis' screen, planet/4/, sometimes it works without that trailing slash, but for consistent reliability, I would recommend putting that trailing slash after every GET request.
Yeah, and just an added note on that too. I find that that's a little unusual that they wanted a trailing slash on that, but I agree with you that I've noticed strange results. Sometimes if you don't use the trailing slash, it's going to cause some kind of a redirect on your request, which you don't really want. So make sure to include it.
Correct. Okay. So, all right, let's go back to our code. All right, we'll start with the people component first.
Yeah, and we
right? So we
decided
can have.
we decided to start with the people component first because we can't really test anything if we do the search bar first. But people and planets, we can build it and then we can just manually type in the URL and we can see if that works, as opposed to building a whole bunch of stuff that we can't test, and then finally when we test it, something breaks and we don't know where it broke. So yeah, little by little, then test.
Yeah. Okay, so in people, all right, so let's start by importing React from React. And then we're also going to import Axios so we can make our API calls. Okay, now we're gonna create our people component. So function people, and then before we forget, have to export default people. Okay, and then inside people, we're just gonna destructure and destructure the props and get ID. We're gonna be using that later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Francis will get to it, but that destructured ID, it's going to be coming in from the path variable. But you will see that Francis is going to get to that later.
All right. Now we're gonna also create our state. So before we create our state, let's import that one as well. Never forget that, or else you'll get an error. Okay, so we'll destructure this. We'll just have people and set people. Use state, and for now we're gonna make that into null. Okay.
And null, because on page load we will have nothing there, and that's going to affect the. Then I think Francis is going to get to it right now, so I'll let her continue.
Okay. All right. So now we're gonna have this little if statement. So if people. Oh, sorry. If people is equal to null, then we just return loading. This is just for a better user experience so that they can still see that, oh, it's looking for something or it's still loading. So they don't just see anything blank there and, they would think that nothing is loading. Okay, so after that, we're gonna create our use effect. So again, don't forget to import that as well. And then that's going to take in a I want to check the chat if people are.
Nobody's blowing anything up. Don't worry.
No, I'm okay.
I'm gonna keep an eye on it too.
I get. All right.
Yeah, this should just be
Okay. Well,
explicit, I
use
guess, 'cause-
effect is gonna take what?
Here,
Nobody is answering.
maybe I can call on someone. Baxter.
All right.
Baxter, what are we gonna pass use effect here? Oh, Baxter, tell me you're
Oh
there.
no, he
He's
disappeared.
there.
He's there. Unmute yourself. Here, I'll unmute you. Wait, I tried. Oh, crap. Unmute. Okay.
There we go. All right. Where are we at here? Use effect?
Yeah. What is it gonna take?
All right. Let's see here. Taking our ID, isn't it?
So our component was taking in ID as a prop, so we already have that.
Mhm. So use effect.
I'm here to watch you, girl. You tell me.
All right.
Here's the thing, Baxter. Use effect is always going to take the same kind of thing. So it won't necessarily be the same thing, but we're always going to pass it a callback function.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. Cool. So in our use effect, we'll have our axios.get to make our API call. And from the link earlier, sorry, give me 1 second. My earphones just started dying. Oh. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Okay, so we will have so if you remember from the Star Wars API, we'll just get that link and then take in that ID, which we destructured here earlier, and then just another slash. Okay. And then now that will also take in a promise, and inside that we have another callback function, right? Oh, sorry.
So it's not so much that it's taking in a promise, it's returning us a promise, right?
Oh, yes.
When we call get, that's giving us back a promise.
Yes. And then we'll just have set people, and inside that will be our response.data.
And going forward, response.data is appropriate for Star Wars API. However, different APIs have different structures of the response. So from time to time, you're gonna have to console log the response, the entire response, and kind of dig in, looking at your console, like what you need to do to get extract the information you want. But in this case, that is exactly 100% right.
Yeah, good point. In fact, I think the Pokemon one, it would be something like response.data.results, right?
Yeah.
So here, I mean, you can always also name this res, but it has to be consistent with this. But for all intents and purposes, right now we're just going to use response.data. Okay, so and then we're also going to have a catch. For now, we'll just console log it. And then here in our brackets, we will have ID.
Yes. And we have the ID there because if you guys remember that that array that has ID in it, it tells the use effect when it refreshes the information or it gets that information again. So if it's blank, it's just going to be when the page loads. However, we put the ID in there in case you want to search for a different person, then when the ID changes, it'll reload and do the get request again. If you don't have that there, even if you make the request, nothing's going to change because the page didn't reload.
Yep, correct. All right, so now that we all have that going on. Now we're just gonna be doing our return. Here we have return, and I'm just gonna copy paste, but let me actually, let me start with just some divs, h1, and then we'll just have people, which is from our state, and then dot name. Okay, so just make sure that this is verbatim according to the Star Wars API. So if we go to people, so we have all of these things over here, these keys, and you have to make sure that you are copying it exactly how it's written there. So if we go back to our code, let me just put all that here. Okay, so if you see here, it says height, it says hair underscore color, eye underscore color, skin underscore color, because that's how it's written here. So just make sure that you copy that exactly how it is over here. And also, I mean, it would be better probably if you just copy paste. So just copy whatever's inside those quotes and just put them in your, in these like curly braces, just so you make sure that you're typing the correct thing. Okay, so that's done, right? So now we just save it, and then now we go back to our app. So first, you would like to import that. So import people from /components/people. And then also you want to import router as well from @reach router. This will be for us to be able to route to the path where people is. So inside these divs, we're gonna have our people path. So first we have to create these router tags, and then inside that we have people, and then of course we need to take them to a path. So that would be path equals, and then quotes, and then /people/:ID. So that will take us to that specific ID that gets passed onto the URL or the search by ID.
And I'd like to interrupt real quick, Francis. So just so you understand more explicitly what router is, the path here and people, it doesn't have to match the API. This is just arbitrarily what you want it to be. When people go to this URL on your site, it's going to trigger this people component, and that's what's going to render on your page. So that's what the router does. And obviously, you guys should know that the colon ID is the path variable, which we destructured in the people component. Thank you, Francis. Go ahead.
Okay, so now we go back to our app, and we can, up here at the top, we're going to type people, and then slash, any ID number that could exist in there. So maybe 2, and now it loaded C3PO. We can try others too, like 4, maybe Darth Vader. All right, so that works. So now, okay, let's go back to our code. So now we have to also do planets. So with planets, copy paste. But just be careful not to that you are changing everything that says people into planets. So it's practically the same thing. It will also be the same for the other stuff that you still want to add. Say for example, you want to add species or films or starships or anything like that. So, but we have a little trick. So if you press Control F and then click this little thing that says toggle replace mode, right? Okay, so, and then you also want to match case, which is this thing. So say for example, we're just going to find people with all in lowercase, and then replace that with planets. And then here, over on this side, it's gonna say replace all, and that will just replace everything, all the lowercase people into lowercase planets. And then you also want to change the ones that have the uppercase people. So people, and then change that to uppercase planets. And then just replace all. And of course, even if we have this, you still have to constantly double check just so you know that your code is working perfectly fine. So here we have planets, planets. Okay, so everything looks good. And then we just save that. And then now we go back to our app.
Oh, 1 second, Francis. Let's go back to the planets component.
Sure.
And let's go back to the bottom of the return statement. You know, planets don't have a hair color or eye color.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry. That's not bad. But they do have on the list, it is, give me 1 second. Okay, so for planets, on the list that they gave us on the platform, it's climate. And change all that, climate. Then here, instead of hair color, terrain, and planets dot terrain, and then surface water, surface underscore water. Then lastly, population. Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce Francis's point. Although the copy paste and the find replace, it's a tool that I like to use. It's really important to go through all the code anyway and just double check.
Be like what I did.
Yeah,
pretty much.
No, Francis is on point though. She knows what's going on.
All right. So back to our app. So again, we're going to import planets from /components/planets. And then in here, we will also add that. Planets, and then of course the path, which is /planets/ colon ID. And just close that up and save it. Okay. All right, so we can also test that on our little app here. So if we try planet/3, okay, so it worked. We can try 5. Okay, perfect. So back to our code. I hope is everybody
Yeah, let's
good
see.
so
Let's see if we have any questions thus far. Just kind of like take a quick breather.
Good point to ask questions. Yes.
Gio, how are you feeling? Can I get a thumbs on this so far? Nick says everything looks good so far. Gio? Truth-tan good. Gio looks good. All right. I'm feeling all right. Max. Any questions though, Max? Did anything not look right? Understanding it more and more. Okay, good. Fantastic. No questions. All right. All right. Looks like we're good to proceed.
all right. Okay, where are we? Okay, so now we have to create our search bar. So over here, this is basically what we're gonna see up top where you can search. So let's start by importing React once again. React from React. And then let's create our, I can close this one. So by the way, the Control F is file specific. So if you Control F on a specific file and then do that replace, it only replaces it on your that file that you did it on, but also still make sure that it didn't get changed anywhere else. Whereas here, like you see, I mean, it's still the same, so we're good to go. So now we create another functional component called search bar. Okay, and then we will also export that. Don't forget. It's easy to forget to export. So just do that beforehand. Okay, now we're gonna create our const, and then we'll just call it form state and set form state. Use state, and then our use state will take in an object. Okay, and then in our object we will have options, which we will set to people as a default, and then we will also have ID that we will set to an empty string for now. Okay. And then after that, we'll create our return. And in our return, we will just create this simple form. So nothing too fancy just yet. Form. And then inside our form, we will have a label. And it's going to say search for, search for. And then for our drop down, it will be called select. So this is going to allow us to do that drop down. And for select, we'll just name it options. And then
this options here, we named it options because when if you look on line 5, that is an actual key value pair inside the state. So it's actually very important that we name this options, or more importantly, that this name matches the key on line 5.
Yep.
I would argue that maybe a better name for that would be selected option or option, because really it's only going to be one option in there, right?
Do that.
Sounds good.
Do option.
I'll
The value for that will be, in these curly braces, we'll call it form state dot option. Okay, so we'll close that. And then inside the select, we will have these things called option. Basically, when you do the drop down, these are the things that you see. So in there, we will have value, people, and then we'll just type people inside. And then another one would be planets. So we have that, and then another thing we need would be ID. So we'll just have another label called ID, and then an input field that we will give the name of ID based on our state over here. And then we will also give it the value of form state dot ID. Then just close that up. And then of course after that is the button. And we'll just say search. Okay. All right. And then now, of course, we need something to handle, you know, the on change for input and also for select. So let's say on change, we'll just call it on change handler. So that's under select and then also under input. Okay, cool. So now we have to create that on change handler. So here we'll create a new function called on change handler. It'll take in an event. And inside that we have our set form state, has an object, and then we will just do this little spread operator form state, and then event.target.name, which
and while Francis is typing, I wanted to just, in case you guys missed it, line 11, the spread form state, is to make sure that it's pretty much copying everything that's already in the form state. And then after that's done, event.target name, we're going to just overwrite that single field. As opposed to if we did not have that spread state, then the only thing that's going to be on our form state is the one field that we're changing. And then on line 12, event.target.name is in brackets. Morley has mentioned it several occasions before, but that's because it's a variable. If we did not have those in brackets, then it would create a key value event.target.name, like literally event.target.name, as opposed to calling a variable of the input field that triggered the event.
Correct. And then, okay, so we also have to do an on submit for our form in order for us to be able to process that whatever information we submit there. So on submit handler, we'll just put it that way, and then now we create this function for on submit handler. Okay, so that will take in an event. And then in there, of course, we have to do our prevent default as usual. And then, okay, so now we will have to, so every time we search for something, it has to take us to that component, or it has to take us to that whatever ID that we put in. So up here, oh, sorry, I completely forgot to import use state for that. Okay. So of course, we also need to import navigate. This will help us to go to that particular ID. Navigate from at reach router. Then here, under our event.prevent default, we want to navigate it to, so we have this slash, and then we will concatenate form state dot option plus another slash plus form state dot ID. Okay, so this will be whatever we select on the drop down, and then this will be the ID that we have put in, and then it will show us that component. Does that make sense? I mean, everybody okay so far?
Yeah, so when we navigate, to that variable on line 20 to that path, it's going to be triggered by the routes that we set up on the app.js. This is not the same as going to the Star Wars API.
Correct. Okay, so
yeah, Nick was
now
asking, so sorry, Francis, so those are
Yeah.
basically variables that make up the route. Yeah, that's essentially correct, Nick.
Okay. Now we go back to our app, and we have to import that search bar so that it will appear at the top of our app. So import search bar. So you can do it in any order. I like to organize it like this. So don't feel like you have to do it this like you have to do it like this.
Actually,
So
they should.
They should. It's good
Whatever,
practice.
like, I mean, in my opinion,
Keep your code
whatever,
organized.
like, everyone decides which way you want to do it, but just stick to it. Have, like, make it organized so that if you leave your job, someone else can come in and they're not gonna, like, want to tear their hair out because your code is so unorganized. Also, for yourself, if you want to debug going back, then it's gonna be much easier to find if it's organized in a certain way.
Yep. What I like to do sometimes is I just like to do a little something like this. And I also put it here. So just add components. And that just kind of, helps me find things, I suppose. Okay, now we're gonna import our search bar and put it in our app. So you would want to put this outside of the router so that it constantly appears. No matter where you are, it'll appear up there. So we'll just put search bar and then just close that. And then save. Okay, so let's check our app if it appeared. Okay, now it's up there. So now we can click on people or planet. We don't have to navigate through our little URL. So let's say we want to search for planet number 1. We just search and it's right there. And we can also do people. Let's go back and we can look for Darth Vader again. There you go.
Ooh.
So it works. It works so far.
Looking
Okay.
good.
All right. Cool. All right. So next we have to create that error message. So inside our components, we're just gonna create another file called error.js. So this will just contain our error message. I'm not sure if other people did it differently, but I tried to put it in another file just so it's kind of separate from everything else. You don't have to like keep putting it in everything. So here in our error file, we're just going to, as usual, import React from React. And then we're going to create our function called error. And then inside that, or before that, let's export default error. So these are just things that, you know, you can do before everything else so that you don't forget. And then now we have our return. And inside that, we will have our div and then a little h4 tag. You don't have to do this, but it's what was in the it was what was in the requirements, at least, of the wireframe. So what should we put, Albert?
You fucked up.
All right.
Message doesn't matter.
Hey, let's keep it G-rated. No.
The message doesn't matter, Francis. Whatever you want. A, B, C, D, F, G.
All right. Well, just put these are not the droids you're looking for or something.
Yeah, because we got to meet the client's specifications, right? We can't just
Yeah.
sit there and do whatever we want.
All right, image, and then it says to put the picture of Obi-Wan. So we'll just have an alt here that says maybe not the droids, LOL or something. And then we'll have a little src. This is where we're gonna put the URL for the image. So I'll just copy this one that I put on mine. Okay. Cool. So we'll just close that up and then save that. And then now back to our app. Okay, so under all these things, but still inside our router, we'll have our error path. Say error. Oh, sorry. It says error. Oh, sorry. I completely forgot. Okay, so we also have to import error from /component/error. Okay, so we have our error message. Now we have to go back to our people and our planets app so that we can navigate to that, just in case they put in a bad request or they put in you know, like basically an ID that doesn't exist. So for that, instead of the console log here, we'll just put a callback request, or yeah, what is it? Callback. Callback function, I meant to say.
Oh,
Not
that promise.
callback. And then we're just gonna navigate. We're gonna use navigate. So before you continue, don't forget to import navigate from reach router. And then, okay, so navigate is a function, so it's gonna take in a path, and I'll just lead them to error, basically. And then same goes for the planet. So I would just copy that and then paste it here in our console log. And just replace that. Okay, navigate. Oh, yep. Like I said, don't forget to import navigate from @reach router. All right, let's try that. So let's put maybe just any number and see if that works. It's taking a bit. There we go. Oh no, it says doids. But essentially essentially that's the that's what they're gonna see. So we can also test that for planets. Okay, search. Yep, still works. Cool. So back to our error message. Maybe I can just like, it's gonna bother me. And also on our search bar, it's gonna say planets. Okay. All right. So any questions so far by what we did? Those are all like just the basics. That's not including any of the ninja bonuses yet. But we will show you how to do the homeworld as well. But I just want to see if anybody has anything so far. Any questions?
Just a note that I wanted to throw in, and I think I may have talked to Lawrence about this, and possibly Albert, I can't remember. In terms of navigating to the error component, I would actually recommend staying on the current route that you're on and then showing the error, because that way if they look up in the address bar, they can see, oh, this isn't a valid URL essentially, right? So if they're seeing people/500, they'll know, hey, I can't go to that route. Versus if you navigate them away to somewhere else, they don't necessarily know what route they hit that caused that error anymore.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So in order to do that, we would import the error component on the planet and people components, and
Right.
in the catch, we would return that component.
Yeah, so like in the catch, you'd probably have some extra piece of state in there that would be something like has error. Set it to false initially, right? And then you'd set that to true at some point if you did have an error, and then you could just render that down below.
Okay.
I'll have to fix that after the demo.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I believe
This is just for the demo, you guys.
Yeah. All right. I believe this is where I take over.
Well, we gotta do the homeworld. Without the link yet.
Are you trying to make a separate component?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So later on, Albert is gonna show you guys how to because one of the ninja bonuses is if you click on their homeworld, it'll lead you to see the information about that planet or that homeworld. But for now, we're gonna show you guys how to create that API call and then link it to the person, I guess, or the people.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna get into some bonuses. Before we do that, let's see if we can get thumbs on this from everybody who's kind of been watching along. I want to make sure that they feel good about this stuff. And then also, if they kind of want to bail out and start working on some other assignments at this point, because we've covered all the basic stuff, and that's probably okay. So let's see if we can get thumbs from everyone on this. Thumbs up, okay. Pretty sure your thumbs up, Francis. Yeah, Max, okay, good. Up, up, up.
Cool.
Nice.
No other like anything that needs clarification or?
Yeah, exactly. Now's the time for that before we jump into the bonus territory. All right, looks pretty good. Were we missing any thumbs? I think that's everyone.
No.
It seems like Aya's still here, but I think she is not, right?
She's
Don't worry,
probably
Mama.
working on something.
I know she was fine with this assignment, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. You're good to go.
All right. Hello, everybody. That's my husband, everybody.
Hello, Francis's husband.
Okay.
Don't be dumb.
All right. Okay, let's get into the bonus territory. All right. Let me close this out just so it's not in the way. So now we're gonna create a new oops, sorry. We're gonna create a new component called Homeworld. Oops. Homeworld.js. So in Homeworld, we are going to just import React. So our import React from React as per usual, and then import Axios because we're also going to be making an API call in this component. So let's create function Homeworld, and then after that we're also going to export default Homeworld. Okay, so in our Homeworld, we're gonna be taking in URL. So this is a props that we're destructuring. And then under that, we're gonna be creating this const, and it's gonna take Homeworld. We're also destructuring here. Set Homeworld use state, and that's gonna take in an empty object. Okay, so of course here at the top, we're gonna be importing use state as well. Never forget that. Okay, so just to reiterate on this URL, so we're gonna be using this for our axios.get, and this URL is gonna be defined in people later on. So it's gonna be grabbing from that people plus or people ID. And then, because if you look at the Star Wars API for Homeworld, this is what you see. It's not necessarily a name that you're seeing, like the name of the Homeworld. You're seeing a link. So we have to grab that and call that in our Homeworld. So, okay. So let me do a return here. And in there, we're going to be creating a div. And then we're also going to create this little p tag that says Homeworld. And then inside curly braces, we will have homeworld.name. Okay, so that's coming from our state. All right, so from there, we're going to have this use effect, which of course we also have to import from here. Use effect. This way it will, you know, obviously like show up right away. And that will take in a callback function. And then we will have this axios.get, and then in there, instead of passing in the link, we'll just have URL. So now you can see where that gets passed in. And then we have a promise, of course. So we'll have a callback function, response, and then in there we will put set homeworld, and then it'll take in response.data. And then we will also have the dot catch, and we'll just console log it. It's just, you know, nice to put it there, even though you're probably not going to be using it. And then, of course, in here, we will have to take in the URL. Okay. So, I mean, it's basically just like your basic API call, you know, use effect and all that. It's just all the basics, but we will save that, but we will render that in since they're in the same folder, we don't have to put components / homeworld, we just have to put dot / homeworld. And then here, I'll just put it under the name of the person. And I'll just have, I'll just render it here, kind of like what we do when we're in app.js. If you guys remember, like we just do something like this or something like this. So here, we can say homeworld, and then
URL.
yeah, URL. And we'll take in that URL from earlier, right? And then we will put people.homeworld, so we can grab it from that API. And then just close it up. We can also wrap this in a p tag if you want, but I mean, I don't think it's necessary because we already have it in a p tag in Homeworld. But let's try it. Okay. Let me go to my app and see if we can get Darth Vader's Homeworld appearing under his name. Cool, that's right there. So it just takes a little bit longer for it to render than the rest of them, because it's, you know, a link inside a link kind of thing. So I guess that contributes to it. I'm not really sure. Maybe Morley can explain why it's taking longer.
Yeah, so what's happening is that we were first loading up the actual person, and that makes one API call. Once we get that person, then we will be able to make the call to go and get the Homeworld. So you can think of these things as being chained almost, right? We're waiting for one call to finish before we make the next one. So that's why you're seeing something
there. Sounds good. Let's try it with 13. I don't know who 13 is. Chewbacca. Cool. So yeah, that's pretty much how you do a Homeworld or the API call inside your API call. If another ninja bonus was also to add more I guess fields. So instead of just having people and planets on there, you can also have, like I said earlier, you can have species, you can have all sorts of things that the Star Wars API offers. Yeah, if you look into their documentation, they offer a lot of things like the starships and all that. So that's easier to add once you have the people or the planets template, because then you just change everything to whatever information is on there, whatever it's called. So you can change this to species and all that, and then just add it to your app. And also don't forget to add it to the search bar down here in the options, so you can still, you know, select it from the search bar. But other than that, I think my presentation is done, but Albert will also show you guys how to link this.
I can take care of it.
Yeah. He'll teach you
Alright.
guys how to link this and go to the planet that
Okay.
the corresponding planet.
Thank you, Francis. Went pretty smooth. I appreciate that. All right. I'm going to initiate my screen share. If any of you guys are like how far behind and you don't care about the bonuses, feel free to drop out. But if you are interested in making extra API calls, this is it. So for the Homeworld state, I'm just going to jump right into it. For the Homeworld state, I actually did it different than Francis. I did not create a separate component. I made a double use effect call in my same, wait, hold on. Am I sharing the right screen? What do you guys see?
I
Right
see
now,
you
I'm just
select a
seeing
set of
you.
people.
Oh, now
Yeah.
we see Nick. Hey, Nick.
There we go.
There we go.
You guys see my code?
Yeah, we see like the split screen.
That's good. All right, so on the left side, right here, this is my people component. I, again, did it separately, differently than Francis. I made 2 use effect calls on the same component. So what I did was I created a const homeworld state. And in the essence of time, I'm not gonna just try to write it out. I'm just gonna run you through my code. So I created another state for the homeworld. The first use effect call is going to call on page load. And now obviously this has no idea what to get at that moment. So I have to set the default state to have that. Now for the use effect on getting the homeworld is a key that exists inside the return of people. So that is what I used. On a successful catch, we set the homeworld state to have that data. And I have the reload on ID and people state because on the page load, it's not gonna render and it won't be there and it won't re-render. But when people state changes and it's finally loaded, it will have access to that and then it will reload. All right, so the trickiest part of this was actually creating a functions that extracted the ID from the URL. As Francis pointed out on the Star Wars API, it gives you a URL. It always ends with the slash, so that is why I did URL link to. Actually, before I get into that, let me get into this if statement. I'm calling this function get homeworld ID when I render here. Now, if I do not have this if statement, that ID, that does not exist, so the page will not reload at all. So that is why I have this if statement. If homeworld state.url exists, the rest of the function will start to execute. So I shorthanded the URL to the homeworld state.url, set that to a variable, and let I equals the URL.length -2. -1 means it's going to start at the last character. However, because Star Wars API ends with the trailing slash, you have to start at -2. And this is an empty string that's going to be concatenated to eventually get us our ID. If the ID is more than 1, then it'll go into there. So we're going to go into the while loop. We're starting at the end because I starts at the end of the URL, and it'll stop once it hits a slash. So we're pretty much concatenating backwards. So since we're going backwards and concatenating backwards, the ID will actually end up returned to us in the right order. We're decrementing here, and we are returning the ID. So now this is the line that is separate from Francis's. So I did the homeworld, which is just a straight up text that will always show up. And then I link to the planets. I invoke the function, and then I end with the trailing slash. And this is going to be the homeworld state.name. So if I pull up my React app here, if we look for Luke Skywalker, boom, loading, there you go, homeworld loading. And then we go there, it goes to planets and 1. So pretty much the trick of that was to create an algorithm that extracts it. Since you know that the URL construction is very uniform across the board for Star Wars API, this is only as reliable as they are consistent. And that was the last Ninja bonus. However, if you're interested, I took it a step further so that I could filter by name. So if I search for everybody with the name H, it'll return everybody with H. And then if I click on them, it'll go to that page. So if you're interested, you can stick around. However, this is not even part of the assignment at all. So if you're behind and you need to get going, that's fine. I understand. But in order to do that, where did I do it? All right. So my search component was right here. Now, pretty much it was the same with Francis, except I have these. Option is, am I searching by people, planets, or species? Search by is when I drop down menu, I get to choose if I want to search by the ID or the name. And don't worry, I'll get into the details in a second. This is just the overview of it. And then the search param is what's actually in the input field. If we go to the form, again, everything is the same as Francis's. However, the search by has its own drop-down menu. And the option value has the search by ID, search by name. All right. So that's what's going to come up here. And when we submit the form, it's going to contact this. So it's going to determine if the form state search by is search by ID. So that's the case that it is for the assignment. You don't need this if statement if you're only searching by ID. However, since I have the two search parameters, I put this if statement in. So this one is pretty straightforward. It's what Francis already covered. However, this one, it's going to trigger the search by name, and it's going to do the search. Now, I had to create a component. Now, mine is called Luke API app, but for most React projects, this will be the app.js file. So I have a search results component. This path, even though it looks a lot cleaner here, is essentially the same as the one that I showed you. As the one that I showed you right here. Search results. It's essentially just pulling the data. This is the only part that's different. If you notice right here, this I found in the documentation. So this means that it's running a search query. The search for is planets, people, species, whatever it is. Search param is the actual thing that you put in the input field. Now, if the response data, if you search something and nothing happens or it doesn't exist, oops. All right, so it's gonna send you to another message. So, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it.
One note I wanted to make, Albert, on your extracting the ID, that's a case where we could have used regex to very easily kind of pull out that ID without doing. But this is really cool that you sort of exercised your algorithm skills there. I like that.
Yeah, it wasn't just me. Lawrence helped me out with it too. But
okay.
Yeah, it was I was glad to be able to figure it out. But yeah, again, this is just bonuses stuff that you don't really need to concern yourself with unless if you're actually interested, which I was, because this was my first time with APIs. So I thought that this would be a skill to that I should learn. The last thing to note about the search results page is this link right here. I mapped through every result in the search results state, and then I returned a link. The link has a get ID function, which is very similar to the Homeworld ID function that I had. In this case, I did not need the if statement because the ID would have already been extracted because the search results already rendered. And then I put result.name in curly brackets because it's a variable inside JSX. But other than that, yeah, I just wanted to do a very quick run through of this because you don't even need to do it. But if anyone's interested, I could send them a copy of the code so that they can look over it. But yeah, my end is done. Thanks for your attention, guys. Thank you, Francis, for setting it up. Yeah, that's it. We're done.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking this on today, and I feel like probably you learned a little bit. I know that all of your cohort mates learned a lot as well. So it was pretty cool.
Thanks for
seeing you guys in
listening. Thanks
action.
for letting us do it. Yeah, actually, I did actually change my code quite a bit after I looked at Francis's. So, so it's all good. Yeah, it was actually a good learning experience.